Okay, so all right. I think we're live. So, how's it going, everybody? I see everybody in the chat here. Got Jennifer, Mandy. Hello, Brian. Buster, what's up? Guardian, how you doing? Obviously, Dr. Time. John Kennedy, hello. Who else do we got out here? I just want to make sure. Amy, how are you? Okay, so getting right to it. Could we be outgrowing the scientific method? So on Twitter, I follow futurism.com, and they come out with some really interesting and frightening articles sometimes. And this certainly can be categorized well as both. It's interesting and frightening because it's almost unending what it could mean, this particular article. So I'm going to read a little bit about the article. So we all know what like theories and hypotheses and the scientific method and all of that is. Well, you know what? Let's do it this way. So I'm going to read this. I'm going to go over laws, theories, and hypotheses. So it says here, over the past century, science has advanced considerably. It's broadened in terms of scale and scope, and now it covers the farthest reaches of the known universe. Science has also utilized its own achievements to advance its own capabilities. Consider how research has been augmented and assisted by technology. For instance, throughout this scientific expansion, one aspect of the process has remained the same: the method. Our concept of what science is and does comes from how it approaches. Let me see. Do I sound okay, everybody? I want to make sure I'm sounding okay. I'm going to keep reading. I'm assuming that I'm sounding okay. So where was I? Throughout this, no matter the topic of study, the scientific method begins with posting a hypothesis and in parents it has a reasonable guess based on what we know or observe. End of parent. This has long been the foundation of the scientific method. These hypotheses, once supported by repeated testing, become theories. A theory is widely held to be true and remains so until disproven. We use theories to explain scientific laws. Laws are universal, always true, and cannot be proven to be wrong. Okay, so we've gotten that out of the way, and I'm glad that they put that. Sounds good. Excellent. Thank you, Darren. I appreciate that. Okay, so they've got that there, and then they have a bold headline: do we always need evidence? One vital component of the scientific method has always been evidence. Evidence supports a theory, and theories explain laws. Without evidence, it would be difficult to prove anything is scientifically conclusive. At least that's what we've always believed. Quote, the standard view, of course, is that science relies on evidence, says Philip Ball, former editor of Nature, who hosted a panel organized by the Institutes of Arts and Ideas. As science increasingly become more complex, there seems to be some areas where evidence seems lacking. In other areas, some scientists have stated or have started to wonder if evidence is even required at all. Did you get that? If it's required at all, evidence. The panel tries to address the question: what does evidence mean in science? Wow. Are we moving towards an era of science where the importance of evidence has been diminished? Are these cutting edge fields in science, particularly, and get ready for this, guys, in physics, which often deals with complex ideas like string theory and multiverses, quote, in danger of drifting into fantasy, as Ball puts it? Tara Shears, and I'm not kidding, folks, particle physicist and resident at CERN, expert, accompanied by Rupert Sheldrake, the scientist behind theory of morphic resonance. And I clicked on that. And by CUNY philosophy professor, going to try this, Massimo Pigliucci. Try to answer this, quote, problem of evidence in modern science. So just the fact that they're questioning that the evidence is one piece we're going to put aside for 1 second, okay? Because that has a lot of there's many directions you can go with this, and it's almost unending why something like this would be floated, because understand this is most likely a trial balloon. One of the theories, if you're really on the far end of distrusting the authorities or the government or mainstream or the MSM or whatever it is you want to call it, it would be that, obviously they're going to stick with this, but they're not going to display the evidence to the broader masses, or even those that may not be in fields actively, but are scientifically literate. People that can read charts or read code or read anything in any kind of STEM field. I'm in a STEM field, so I can read a lot of code. And so perhaps what they're trying to say is that they would create a barrier from which, if they do have that evidence, they could say, well, we don't have the evidence. Now that would be a sign, that would be a sort of conspiracy way to put it. Well, but we'll get back to that. What I want to go into Rupert Sheldrake's his article here on morphic resonance. It is astonishing and very interesting. Morphic resonance is a process whereby the self-organizing systems inherit a memory from previous similar systems. And in its most general formulation, morphic resonance means laws of nature are more like habits. The hypothesis of morphic resonance also leads to a radically new interpretation of memory storage in the brain of biological inheritance. Memory needs not be stored in material traces inside the brain, which are more like TV receivers than video recorders. Tuning into influences from the past and biological inheritance need not all be coded in the genes or in epigenetic modifications of the genes. Okay, so let's get back into that again one more time from the top. Memory need not be stored in material traces inside brains, which are more like TV receivers than video recorders. Tuning into influences from the past and biological inheritance need not at all be coded in genes or in epigenetic modifications of the genes. Much of it depends on morphic resonance from previous members of the species. Thus, each individual inherits a collective memory from past memories. And my cats are going crazy. So, memory from past. Guys, stop. You're going to knock over all my pens. Please. Okay, sorry, guys. They're knocking over my pens. Thus, each individual inherits a collective memory from past members of the species and also contributes to the collective memory affecting other members of the species of other members of the species in the future. So imagine this, what this article is saying. Do you understand how mind altering this is? So we have the brain first is a receiver. So that means the source from which we really don't have any evidence, right? Because we don't really need any evidence. So the source from which they either have that evidence or they don't know what that evidence is. But it would make sense that our capacity for memory isn't actually stored in the brain, and it's actually the brain itself is a receiver. So everything you see and feel and you think is real around you would be in fact simulation theory, and you're not actually here. You are truly a ghost in the shell. So that alone in an article, with all kinds of links to different papers and everything on this on morphic fields and morphic resonance, and I included it. All of this stuff is included in the description. You can explore it for yourselves. But the more important thing is all kinds of things come into play if these kinds of things like um, epigenetic modifications of genes can happen at a collective level, and particularly, uh, you get into things like propaganda. You get into things like modification of 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 sort of the collective conscious. It becomes much more easy to do those kinds of things. So the way in which society and the way in which we as individuals interpret the constructs around us that we equate to civilization and society can be changed if you were to be able to sort of get the address of this shared memory, this shared existence, this collective memory. Then that becomes the war. Then doesn't become, it's ridiculous to fight wars on this plane of existence. It's ridiculous because all we are is we're fighting at the receiver level, almost like a video game. You need to go deeper than if what this is saying. Memory need not be stored in material traces inside brains, which are more like TV receivers than video recorders, tuning into influences from the past. So this too also explains the Mandela effect in a way. So the tinkering and the changing could be from that collective memory, from that collective cubbyhole from which we all pull down from. And it's a rearranging of sort of the indexes of that cubbyhole of that's what that is then. It sounds to me like it's a much more easy thing to do because I was thinking if the Mandela effect isn't something that's natural or real, then certainly it must be something that is coded. And if it's coded and it's changed, it's very difficult while a system is running live to change that code on the fly like that. It's incredibly disruptive. But if and I would think the way I was thinking before I read this article, the way I was thinking, well, perhaps they shut us down like Dark City, the movie Dark City, and we just don't know what happened. But the way this is talking about, if picking up signals and vibrations and frequencies, you're talking about changing things in the collective memory of what we consider the past, tinkering with that elsewhere, and then all you have to do, because it sounds like it's something separate than we are. We are here. So then all you have to do is sort of go to the next chamber. You have the collective chamber and then you have the individual chamber or the illusion of the individual chamber. And that's where you sort of change the frequency, the cymatic frequency, the vibrational frequency of the perception of the individual, of their individual past and the collective past. There too, you can also change with the collective memory of society and the world itself. So this takes it to a next level for people like Flamenco. It takes it to the next level for anybody who's into any kind of alternative history. Those alternative histories could actually be like dials from like a 60s sci-fi movie. They could be changed and moved and dialed up. And if you remember in the olden days before my time, they used to have these punch cards that you would read in. Well, and you would punch in a certain sequence and then the computer would read it in and then it would act out that particular sequence. It's almost like that where you just sort of punch in what you want to change that particular piece of history. The computer reads it in and it doesn't overwrite. And then obviously there's a series of cascading triggers that would happen that would be unexpected. And perhaps that's what we have here is a series of cascading triggers with that code changes, the Mandela effect. But just reading these articles are so mind-blowing is that not only is time absolutely irrelevant, but so is everything around us in a lot of ways, at least beyond our perception. And in a lot of ways, I feel so much more vulnerable and bizarre, right? It's it's so weird. And then it's coupled very well for futurism, which is I like to go to futurism.com because it is sort of the trial balloon of where the wacky world of the religious movement known as scientism is going to take you. You see, there's real science, and that's the science that they've explained to you, and that science I'm in love with. I love that. I love that idea of being able to repeat something in, I guess, well, now it's not the real world according to morphic resonance. It's just sort of we're just receiving this illusion around us. But I like the idea of being able to repeat something over and over again and prove that it's real. You know, I like that idea. I love that idea of science. It's beautiful. But when I say scientism, I'm not attacking science or the traditional scientific method. What I'm talking about is the policies, the procedures, the bureaucracy built around it, the politics built around the hierarchy of science. I mean, just look at the medicine industry. That's a whole thing I don't even want to get into. I might get offed. I mean, but if you're down, you know what I'm talking about. Just explore that all on your own with pharmaceuticals and all that. That's about as far as I'm going with that landmine. I am not touching that. But it is a good example of explaining science versus scientism. So I'm not attacking it. I love it. I love it. I love science. I loved the way science used to be. It's so bizarre. It's so strange. There's a collective memory, perhaps, and it's not here. It's not here like how we perceive it in the brain. And that would make sense. Brain injuries, traumatic or even minor brain injuries. I mean, it's sort of like a radio that receives a transmission. The radio just doesn't work as well. That's not proof that it's actually in the brain. It's proof that your transmitter is messed up. That's all that is. Because that used to be an argument for, there is no soul, there's nothing outside the brain. We're just literally just these just golems of meat just walking around, you know. Reductive materialism is the bleakest, most bizarre religion out there, I've got to say. But this is so, and then it gets so radical that the genes from which we draw upon that creates us, those two aren't necessarily derived from your lineage, because what that's really telling you is, you know, it's sort of like someone in the family that is sort of the outcast of the family. That to explain that, because really under that idea of the way in which genes work, it's the idea of explaining the environmental part. If you don't really want to, or if you want to have the environmental part sort of dominate. And then also there's an element of gaslighting with all of this as well. And there's an element of them introducing, I'm going to take them at their word for now about morphic resonance simply because I'm in love with this idea. But I'm not telling you to. What I am saying, and what I do believe about this, why do we always need evidence part of it, is I believe this could be the first parts or the beginning where they take people who are maybe STEM, mathematically or scientifically literate, and begin to pull back evidence from which they find these things. There's a lot of people who think CERN is either a cover for something, and there's a lot of these theories out there that there's something else going on. There's something else that's happening, and CERN is merely the cover for that. Um, I'd like to think that's not true, but you read articles like this, and you do scratch your head, and and then it almost makes the Mandela effect something that is so minor when you, and then again too, you can always point to this and going, well, you got scientists that are even working from CERN arguing, do we really need evidence? That too also, it argues against you know, my idea of the Mandela effect being a natural occurrence. Perhaps it's not. Perhaps CERN, everyone else is right and I'm wrong. Everyone who's suspicious of CERN, everyone who's suspicious of what is it they're doing with these colliders. What is it? Are they even colliding, or is this a big front for something much bigger? I don't know. I don't know. Because really what they're arguing, it sounds to me like they're not arguing whether or not science needs to move forward with the level of evidence it once had. It sounds to me like does science need to move forward and be as honest with the evidence it actually is drawn? And does it need to give it to the public? And in a lot of ways, I guess you could see that company. That's the whole point of national interest, national security, um, patents, all those kinds of things. But this is just basically a sort of a blanket, naked statement saying we're just not going to share with you anymore as a public. So we're kind of locked in on our hierarchy and our system. And I guess if you really want to run with it, you could say, well, since we found, the epigenetic modifications of the collective, and we've reached the collective itself, and we understand how to tune your frequencies at its source, why on earth would we share that information with you? So instead, what we'll do is we'll do a disinfo campaign and tell you that you don't need any kind of evidence whatsoever. Because now we've reached the real frontier, which is the collective. I used to call it the substrata, the muse from which we pull down fiction from. And that's why, there it is. That's why a Parsons can pull down a rocket. Or like I said the other day, Fiction is more powerful than that tank rolling towards you because fiction was the thing from that thought up that tank. And what if that thing, all of that is stored and all the possibilities, they're metaled out in the collective, and then all it is a matter of tuning a frequency, and boom, you have a memory. Boom, you have an invention. And then those that we call wizards or whatever you want to call them, they're the ones that do all the campaigning. They're the ones that do all the careering and a new kind of politics, a politics of the collective, where they actually have to go out into the collective. And that's where they do whatever it takes to pull down from the muse, which now is this collective memory, this not just collective memory, but our collective species, our collective existence. I don't know, it's kind of strange. So I think this is going to take a lot to kind of sink in. It also, um, I received something from someone, and it was a release request, and I just started getting into it, and it's a government paper, it's a DoD paper, and it talks about things where when you talk about human beings or the human brain being more of a receiver rather than the place from which our thoughts come from, that it receives thoughts rather than transmits them. It makes more sense when you start really getting into the more, ethereal kinds of thinking, like the, um, new age kinds of things, or things that people consider dangerous or are frightened of, and where people feel like they're going to lose. One of the most frightening feelings I've ever had was the feeling that I was going to sort of fall out of my body. It's hard to describe it, that feeling where you're about to fall out of your body, if that even makes sense. So it's it's a very strange and absolutely terrifying feeling where where you feel like you're about to be snatched out of your body. And it also explains to a lot where you would have to go back and kind of negotiate your next day if you have to go back to the collective whenever you go to sleep. Um, so yeah, I don't have a mod. I need to get more mods. And I haven't been reading you guys' stuff because I've been on this thing. Sorry, folks, if there are trolls in there messing you up. I apologize. 61. Wow. Hey, hello, everyone. Hello, Manny Buster. What's going on, you guys? Out of body experience. Absolutely. Yeah, cult just means hidden. Absolutely. Philadelphia experiment. Yes. See, all of these things then kind of pale, right? The Philadelphia experiment, the Mandela effect, um, the past. Yeah, Buster, you're a great candidate for that. Absolutely. I should get. Yeah, I will. Let me. Just remind me. Please remember to remind me, and I will. Um, all of these things kind of make sense, and then that's why you can delve into the paranormal. Then that would mean things like ghosts and all kinds of other things are or kind of maybe, I don't know if they're glitches in these vibrational frequencies that we kind of move in, but that also explains the power of music. It explains the power of things like cymatics. Um, oh, definitely, Lenny. Things are never as they appear. Yeah, especially if we're all just vibrational frequencies that are transmitted into these vessels. Again, a ghost in the shell. So that is something else. I don't know. I'm sort of volleying between these two things. Does science need evidence anymore? And if that's the case, then perhaps we in the Mandela effect community were making that kind of dent. Us and other fringe things that we have so much evidence to the contrary at this point. We have so many media relics for the tip of the spear. St. Ed McMahon, where he did work for PCH, not American Family Publishing. However, Someone brought up, and I was trying to remember who it was, and it was kind of a, I wouldn't say it was a terrifying, I think it was more of a dismaying thought that indeed these media relics themselves could themselves be immied and change and could change right under us. And now knowing that we are just kinds of we are just vibrational frequencies that are just perceiving our own existence inside of this realm now that we call a planet, and that really our real life and our real existence is actually being transmitted from somewhere else. We absolutely could be blinded to the room from which we actually stand in, and that the Mandela effect itself could be individualized. It could be something that is customized for each of us, perhaps a test, perhaps something else. Obviously, to me, this would help argue, when we start talking about morphic resonance, and I'll send out the link to anybody that just got on here. This is what we're talking about. Um, Hold on a second. Just going on, here's what we're talking about in terms of futurism. So here's that link, and it'll also be down in the description as well. Um, so that's for you, for everybody. And then the other issue is the uh, morphic resonance. Hold on, give me a second here. Make sure that I'm giving you the right link, because this is just, jeez, this is nuts. Okay, yeah. All right, here's the link for anybody who just got on. And oh gosh, if my machine crashes, I apologize. I've been having quite a doozy here. All right, so there you go. There's that. And for anybody that just got on, I'm going to read this one more time. Memory need not be stored in material traces inside the brain, or inside brains, which are more like TV receivers than video recorders, turning into influences from the past. A biological inheritance need not all be coded in genes or in epigenetic modifications of genes. Much of it depends on morphic resonance from previous members of the species. And my favorite part is, thus each individual inherits a collective memory from past members of the species. That is amazing. And could you imagine being able to go back to this collective memory and tinker with it? This collective memory, especially if all we are is really just frequencies that are actually sent out into this. I don't know what this is now that I'm looking around in this, what I see as a room. I have no idea what this is. I have no idea what I'm dealing with. I got to tell you, this Mandela effect thing is taking me into places that get weirder and weirder and weirder. Science is always changing, yes, and I think science is dead. I think what we're dealing with now is scientism. Scientism is not science. Scientism is political science, or the science or the politics to keep what we used to know as science going. But it's so interwoven with, and it's used, the evidence of science. Why do we need evidence? But evidence is how the arguments are made to contort societies and to change this one on an almost daily basis. It's evidence, man. The data. I can tell you, as someone who's played with data for more than 20 years, I can make data look any way that you can imagine. So if anybody ever cites data to you, tell them you don't believe in data. I've moved around and played with data for 20 years. And you know what data is? It's a series of variables, and you can move or change one of those variables based on your bias, and that data you wouldn't recognize. So if someone cites they say data, or they want to show you a bar graph, or they want to show you something like that, be wary of that. I'm telling you, be wary of it, because data is nothing. If data is anything, it's a series of variables, and you just change one of those, and you can turn a tree into a Lamborghini. by just changing one variable. So data, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't believe it. Don't believe it. So anyway, I sent those out. Um and I'm really out of it now. I'm really I don't know how long have I been on for, because I'm going to go ahead and duck out of here. Hey, and everybody's watching. I know, so we got 60 people watching. Could you please give me some thumbs up? It's free. It helps me out a lot. I'm drowning under trolls. I've been reported on enough to where they have taken my ability to monetize. I know some people, they take the hero's route of they don't want to be monetized, but this is work I do. And you know, I've been doing this for 2 years, and the monetization, you know, I think I've made $700 in 2 years from Google, which isn't a lot. More or less, I use monetization as kind of my firewall whenever I know that I'm in trouble or not. If I'm monetized, then I know that I'm in the good graces still of this platform that belongs to them and not me. So if you could give me a thumbs up, it would really help me out a lot. It's free, it's easy. And I'm on still my trial period. I've been demonetized and I'm trying to get my monetization back. So hopefully I'll get it. They said it's going to take up to a month to review this. So I'm not entirely sure. They said it was from, I was being deceptive with my metadata, which is basically the tags or the titles. But I would like to think I'm fairly consistent in the way that I conduct myself on this channel and the way that I title things on this channel. And it's really hard. People call things clickbait, but you know, you want to catch people's attention. And as long as you do that, and you kind of you're sort of in the vicinity of what of what of what you're talking about with your title, I think you're good to go. And you know, for the basis from which this channel moves and operates, you've got to have a sort of historical perspective. You know, please go back to my 2012 series where I begin to understand or I begin to discuss and try to understand that fuzzy road between life and the afterlife, and our expectations of what it means to be alive and to be dead. And that, you know, death, you know, what is it you expect from death? What do you demand from your creator, from death, from your creator or creators, whatever you believe in? You know, what is it that you expect? Do you demand the clouds to part and all the answers be given to you? And for veterans, I'm sorry, but I feel like I have to re-explain all the time the sort of fundamental understanding that I have, and the sort of the fundamental way in which I conduct myself on this channel, because oftentimes I could see why, if you're coming in out from the cold, it could seem like clickbait, what I'm giving you, and I'm truly not. You know, if you have a historical understanding of the channel, you'll understand that this is sort of an ongoing conversation, whether it's me and Chick or just me or me and a guest. You know, it's an ongoing thing of discovery with the Mandela effect and with all bizarre phenomena, really, because I'm starting to understand and believe, particularly with what we're reading here, that these scientists, what they're doing and they're believing. And you've got to understand science. Science is really what rules you. Your legislatures, whether they're local or they're statewide or national or whatever it is, they don't rule you. It's science that rules you. It's the evidence. And if they don't have to use evidence anymore, it's basically scientists have become by proxy emperors, and they get to say from their field, don't worry about the evidence to the politicians. This is how it is. Go legislate from here. And it's scientists that oftentimes end up taking the place of sort of, I don't know, I don't want to say like a moral police, but kind of I would say a moral inspector general, you know? And so in closing here, I I just, you know, just give me the likes. It'll help me out. It'll really help me out because I'm getting pounded. But a lot of people don't like me. A lot of people don't like this station. So I've tried to be as genteel as I can for as long as I can. But one of the sad and one of the wonderful things about being on YouTube and getting wailed on for 2 years is you develop a thick skin, one, and you begin to drop all um, sort of all I don't know. I don't even know how to put it. I sort of don't even care anymore either. I guess being pretentious about being genteel. You know, you lose a lot of that. And I've lost a lot of that. And it's probably for the best, and it's actually influenced my life for the better. So, in a lot of ways, running a channel that's come under heavy fire has been a good thing. So, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I hope you find the articles interesting and check out this newness. Check out morphic resonance. You know, check out cymatics. Understand the power of frequency, and also understand what you feel and experience is like 1% of existence. Perhaps this collective memory from which they're talking about is sort of what they euphemistically call dark matter. Perhaps, I don't know. So anyway, I'm taking off. Thank you very much. And if you're not a sub, hopefully you heard the earlier part of this where we were actually discussing the article rather me than dovetail into my complaints, and you want to sub. All right, guys. Talk to you later.